Welcome back, ladies. Today we're diving into two more pillars that are just as essential as the other five that we looked at in last week's module two. So, we're going to be talking about sleep and stress resiliency. These two are deeply connected, and when you're off, nearly everything else in your body feels off as well. So, sleep, getting our Z's. By the time we hit perimenopause, sleep disruptions are not only common, they're almost expected. And after looking at your questionnaires, you guys all need some help in this area. Hot flashes, night sweats, racing thoughts, blood sugar dips, these can all play a role. And while things may sometimes feel settled in, once we get into postmenopausal, many women are still finding a difficult time sleeping and it's still elusive for them. But here's the truth. It's not just about feeling tired. Poor sleep affects everything, so it's important. It makes weight loss harder. It raises blood pressure. It ramps up appetite and cravings, often for sugar and caffeine because we want to feel that energy. It fuels inflammation and it's even linked to higher cancer risks as well. In other words, sleep is not optional, it's foundational. It's during sleep that our brain restores itself, our tissues repair, neurochemicals rebalance, our digestive system gets to work better and rest, and our body engages in powerful anti-aging processes. And I'll use that word again, autophagy, because that's where our body is clearing out the old stuff to bring in the new stuff to repair. So let's talk about some ways to move towards that. Some of these may sound familiar to you, but sometimes repetition is what finally gets us to act or we get reminded of things. So move your body every day. Exercise calms your nervous system. When I do equivalent of 6 miles a day, I feel it. I feel fatigued, but in a good way. Get 30 minutes of natural light, ideally in the morning. Get that cortisol up. Stop eating 3 to 4 hours before you go to bed. Cut back on screens 2 hours before sleep and keep the devices out of the room. Just do it. Create a soothing bedtime ritual, which may include a bath, herbal tea, a good book, candlelight. Essential oils can be really, really nice and sweet. I know Diane has a fair amount of experience with that. I don't know if anyone else does. And even gentle yoga can be really calming. Even just 10 minutes. It just kind of puts us in a totally different space. Reduce alcohol because for many women, it actually can be a stimulant at night. So also watch caffeine after noon. I know a lot of you said you were cutting out caffeine right now. And I don't know if that's made a difference on your sleep. You also want to rule out sleep apnea especially if you're waking up and not feeling rested and you feel like you've gotten an adequate amount of sleep. If you're wearing the CGM, which I think most of you are, check for nighttime glucose dips around 2 to 3 a.m. That's a common culprit. And of course, support your hormones. Sometimes just balancing estrogen and progesterone helps reduce hot flashes and night sweats. And then if we're needing a little bit more help, supplements may help. I do have some supplements up my sleeve. And some of my top ones are Magnesium Plus. It's a brand. It also has B6 in it. Something called Sleep Factors, which is also a really, really nice blend. It's got valerian root. It has magnesium. It has serotonin, L-theanine. It has pretty much the kitchen sink, and I know some of my clients do really well on it. Something called phosphatidylserine, and Sleep Factor also has that in it. And what phosphatidylserine does is it actually squashes cortisol. So for some people, their cortisol can go up right when they're ready to go to sleep. So if you're having a hard time going to sleep, that could be a culprit for you. And we need to just shift that diurnal rhythm of cortisol by pushing it down at night and then letting it rise a little bit better in the morning time. There are some creams that contain L-theanine and GABA in it. Both of those are very calming and can be really nice, especially if it's a cream, to just kind of rub on your temples if you wake up in the middle of the night and having a hard time going back to sleep. Low dose melatonin, and I'm not talking the 10 milligrams, I'm talking about 0.3, believe it or not, to 3 milligrams of melatonin. Again, the type I'm talking about comes from the brand Symphony. I mentioned them before. And what we're looking for in the lower doses, again, is to do a reset, to try to get the body to make more melatonin at night all the way to morning time. And usually the 3 milligrams will reset it, and then maybe to maintain it, you would reduce all the way down to the 0.3. For those of you who are on HRT and progesterone rather than topical progesterone, oral estrogen can be a game changer. And the reason for this is that oral progesterone is actually converted in your liver to something called allopregnanolone. And allopregnanolone hits our GABA neurotransmitters, which can be very, very calming. So if you are not on oral progesterone, I highly recommend getting on one ASAP and see if that's helpful. And then what else do we have here? The reishi mushrooms can be really helpful. And there is a cocoa, it's called Calm, and it does have the reishi mushrooms in it. And if you want to try that out, it might be nice this time of year to see if that works. So we're going to shift to stress now, and notice I didn't say stress reduction. We're going to be talking about stress resiliency, because the truth is life isn't going to stop being life, right? And the goal is not necessarily to eliminate stress completely, because that's impossible, but to move through it quicker and with less wear and tear on our bodies and our minds and our psyches. So think of stress resiliency like an emotional muscle. The stronger it is, the less the small stuff wrecks our day. And the big stuff, well, sometimes we do need help and a whole lot of patience and kindness with ourselves. So what is stress really? Stress is simply our body's response to change or a perception of danger. And it doesn't even matter if the change is good or bad. When we're talking about change, it can even be imagined stress. So let's say like worry, that creates a very real physiological response in the body, just as if it was really happening. So, what are the sources of our stress? It's everywhere, right? It's work, it's family, it's caregiving, it's illness, it's loss, it's finances, digital overload, medications, and even eating against what our body needs and how we need to eat, and over exercising and under exercising. So this might not be such a striking fact, but the most stressed out demographic are women who are between the ages of 30 and 45 who are working and raising children. No surprise there, right? But even as we age and maybe get better coping skills, stress still remains one of the root causes of hormone disruption and inflammation and disease. So here is where resiliency shows up. So the best case scenario would be there's a stressful event and then there's a pause. We evaluate what we see as a stressful event, and then we would make a priority, like, this is all really quick, right? How good are all of us at that when we're triggered? And then when we decide, and then we respond. So actually, I think the pause is the biggest part of this. So the stressful event, whether it's perceived or real or whatever, we take a pause long enough to actually be able to evaluate what's in front of us and then prioritize what we need to do in response, decide, and then respond. When we do that, right, our cortisol rises briefly and then it drops and you feel empowered and you go on your merry way. The most common scenario is this, though. We have that stressful event. We don't pause. We have a reaction, right? That adrenaline or cortisol goes whoop. And then we have worry and we have rumination. And instead of the cortisol and adrenaline going up and coming down, it stays high and you feel stuck and your body does pay the price. So it's really important to find that muscle, that resiliency muscle. When we train ourselves to respond instead of react, we do create more peace within ourselves. And it's really, yeah, it's very empowering. So what are some stress management tips? How do we build this resiliency? Well, one is to get clear on your values. When you know what matters, it's easier to say no. It's not the end all be all, but it becomes clearer. Retraining your thoughts. So we all have automatic responses and negative thoughts, which are habits. But like any habit, they can be changed. And the grooved paths, right? We have this pathway of going down the same path and responding the same way. They can be retrained. We can create new pathways. And usually, this is where coaching or therapy becomes important. And I think by the time we hit 50s, 60s, we probably have had some therapy, maybe a lot of therapy, and we kind of don't want to get into it again. I totally get that. That's where maybe a different type of coaching might be beneficial. I do have someone that I can recommend. She does something called transformational coaching. Her name is Barbara Anderson. And I think I put that on either inside the course notebook or on your resource page as well. So it's just a different way of looking at things. And I have found it very helpful and empowering for myself. And don't forget, we have physical stress as well, and that matters. Things like infection, chronic pain, and I already mentioned over exercising, under exercising, poor sleep, blood sugar swings, alcohol, nutrient deficiencies. They all play into the stress that our body is experiencing. So we're aiming for balance, right? Not too much, not too little, that little Goldilocks. And just becoming more aware is really, really helpful. So for this week, your action steps are simple. I want you to start making small shifts to improve your sleep. Make a commitment to yourself. Make one or two, write them down. Make one, and share it with us too. We would love to hear that, to support you. Write them down. Doesn't have to be big shifts, just one or two things you're going to try. Identify your top stressors. Notice your patterns. Where do you react? Where can you respond instead of reacting? Pull out your recent labs because we're going to be using them next week, all right? And if you feel stuck, please reach out for support. You don't have to do this alone. And that pretty much wraps up module 3. It's kind of short and sweet. I think we will revisit some things like your CGM and some of the other things that we've talked about in week 1, module 1, and week 2, module 2, just kind of a catch up. And then we will start getting into more deeper and technical territory with the essential lab work in module 4. And then we'll be hopping into hormones. Like I said before, I'll be shifting module 7, getting into that before we're going to be looking at digestion and environmental toxins. So keep moving forward one step at a time. You're building a foundation that's going to carry you for years to come. So thank you again, ladies, for being on this journey with me and with each other. And I will see you on the Zoom call. Take care.